for today, which meant that I was putting finishing touches on a pitch deck till the wee hours of the morning last night. So I'm not operating on full thrusters today. But there we go. It's all part and parcel of working in the entertainment industry, whether it's writing, music, visual effects, animation, whatever it is. You always have crunch times. Man, if there's a way the industry could operate without crunch times, I'd be all over that. So yeah, I'm just getting ready for my day. I got one last set of notes from my producer, so I'm going to make a couple of minor changes today. That's sort of what I'm pecking away at here, which brings up an interesting point. Software that allows for an iterative workflow. So let's say we got a character design. Let's say we got some sort of creature design, and he's got a scaly texture, and he's put into a presentation in a particular way when, it's a nice composition, good pose, very dramatic looking, and, the producer, and there's world destruction in the background and all kinds of stuff. And the producer says, yeah, that's cool. I just don't like the scales. There has to be an easy way for us to be able to swap that artwork out without disturbing the final layout of what we've got going on in the pitch deck, or what we've got going on in the animatic, or the level layout, and that kind of a thing. So I've run into a little bit of a snag with DaVinci Resolve in the fact that it doesn't instantiate existing clips from your media pool. Instead, it looks like it uses your media pool resource directly. So I'll tell you what I mean. So I generally try to name things when I'm bringing them into an edit timeline with generic shot names. I'll put a description if I need to, but the generic shot names allow me to swap the order of shots or to overwrite existing shots and not have to worry about changing the naming. I know it's just going to slot in where it needs to go in the timeline. So for example, if I got a shot 10 clip that's building destruction, and the director says, well, you know what? I actually want to introduce the villain earlier. So let's have the villain walk into the building in shot 10. Then I can just simply overwrite shot 10, open up my edit timeline, and it should auto-populate the timeline and be there. So it doesn't look like DaVinci Resolve has anything that straightforward. The closest I could find is this idea of it says here, select a new clip in the media pool in the edit page, then right-click the clip you want to replace on the timeline and select conform lock with media pool clip. That's, first of all, not that intuitive, and secondly, one too many mouse clicks for me, guys. So there's that. And the other, I've got visual studies today, so I will be kind of exploring some concepts inside of Photoshop, which should make for an interesting day. So that's it. That's on my slate for today. I'll probably pop in a little bit later and talk about a few things in terms of. We might as well talk a little bit about it now. I've been doing a little bit of a thinking about this so-called dark web. And the reason why I've been thinking about it is because there seems to be an unguided intellectual discourse going on. I say unguided because it seems to be reactionary, right? The embrace of the dark web seems to be quite a reactionary thing. And I don't think it's, well, it might be part and parcel due to polarization, but I think there's a real hunger for intellectual discourse. There are a few different things that are, a few different mechanisms in place in terms of our sort of linguistic turf that we've staked out for ourselves in this day and age. There are a few things that are happening that may be causing this desire. And you got to forgive me, I'm really tired, so I feel kind of baked. But I think one of the things that's going on is this idea of being very, very careful as to what we say. So that's one thing, I don't want to say political correctness, but it is partially driven by that. But the people's emotional definitions of political correctness has evolved to this weird, demonic thing. So there's this idea of guarded discourse, which in academia shouldn't really be the case. On the other side of things, there's also this idea that ideas need to be watered down to hit the lowest common denominator to create market share and things like that. And that's been around for a long time. I mean, at the end of the day, people are creating entertainment properties and properties that communicate with us. Why? To get the most bums in seats and to communicate an idea across a large swath of the general public. But at that same time, I wonder if we're actually pushing narrative boundaries, character boundaries, thematic and moral boundaries with the stories that we're telling. So, there's that side of things as well. There's also this sort of, I guess there's this sort of, there's this anti-elite backlash that has a lot to do with perhaps, I think there's a widening education gap, and one that didn't exist previously. And that might be contributing to just this inability to communicate, to a wider variety of people, wider backgrounds and things like that. Yeah, actually, I don't know if education's really at fault here. Well, education is a huge thing. We'll kind of come back to that. With any generation, there's always faults in the system for how we approach education. I remember the emergence of new maths, when I was younger, and now there are different philosophies for actually getting to know the numbers before sort of trying to solve them. I don't know. There's lots of craziness going on. But, some of it, I tend to try and think about to a certain degree before I pass judgment on it. And I think that's the ethos of what I'm trying to do here is instead of treating intellectual discourse as a contact martial art, perhaps we should be approaching it like an extended chess match, right? With debates and things like that, I don't want to see two debaters with snappy comebacks and sound bites. It's exciting, I must admit. The adrenaline's going, and you do end up picking a side, and it's very primal watching a debate like that. But for me, it's far more interesting to see two intellectual giants actually given the time and the mental space to formulate cohesive arguments, and just have a discussion where they are bringing the best to the table, right? And I don't mind if there's a debate between several intellectual minds and they have laptops and mobile devices available to them, right? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to test them to see if they know what they're talking about? No, we're trying to solve certain issues and certain questions and things like that. And I think that we should move towards a new model of debate where it's not a winner takes all sort of situation, right? Because at the end of the day, I believe that you win an argument when you convince the other person to adopt your side. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But let's go back to this sort of this fear of engaging in intellectual discourse because of this guarded language that we're surrounded by. And, I don't think that's necessarily wrong either. Language does need to evolve to a certain degree. And we have to make allowances and changes for the changing conditions of society, but we also need safeguards as well. So we need to be very careful about what we do. We cannot arbitrarily go stomping around in the china shop of human emotion and sort of human morality without at least first understanding what we're doing. what the place is, what the linguistic territory is, and how we're operating within it. So I think one of the dangers of polarizing, I think we're polarizing because we're given such a limited field of intellectual scope that we stake out our territory. And we seem to be guarding the castle. So we shrink our territory down and down and down and down and down. And then we're guarding the castle in terms of our intellectual territory. And I don't think that's right. I think we should be expanding. We should be expanding into foreign lands. We should be, that sounds a little colonial, doesn't it? We need to be expanding into other countries and other experiences and sort of really pulling in philosophies, ideas from a variety of different sources, and then formulating a more cohesive observation on how to maneuver through this thing we call life. So I think that desire for a deeper level of discourse, where we don't have to guard our language, where it's not dumbed down to the lowest common denominator, where our language is not super simplified, and we can start to explore more complex ideas, is what led to the popularity of the dark web and the rise of the so-called dark web, right? There's a real appetite for open discussion. Now, mind you, the dark web has its denizens, and I vehemently disagree with quite a lot of what's going on there. But the philosophy of having a place where you can discuss things openly is really, really important, right? Now, the dark web, here's the thing, I'm going to separate it, right? So the dark web happened because of a good ideal, an open discussion where we can really explore from various different angles any sort of intellectual concept, right? But there's the backlash, the anger, the relief, the feeling of vindication, the being able to say things that haven't been able to say, and that newfound language freedom, which ironically, that newfound language freedom turns quickly into tyranny, doesn't it? It's like I can say whatever I want, is quickly followed by, and you need to shut up, right? So that newfound freedom is rapidly followed by tyranny, which is just, wow. How did we end up here, guys? How did we end up here, right? For me, the whole age of enlightenment is the understanding of yin and yang. Not to say, actually, there's only yin. Yang can go screw itself. And then people wonder why things fall apart. But, have we gone too far? Have we gone too far? Polarization is at such a height. Like, I don't even know if I can make peace with a Trump supporter, Because, I keep thinking of I don't want to go down that road, but there's an attempt at understanding a variety of different perspectives. It's not just, conservative or liberal, or not really that. It's also about how does all of that operate within the context or within the fabric of everything: religion, politics, law, morality. And then the selfish me kicks in and goes, now I want to take all that, distill it down, and make a super engaging story, or some wonderfully rounded out characters that are full of depth and life and conflict that you can't cleanly label good guy or bad guy. Here's the thing, why are we so polarized in our opinion? Yet when we escape to entertainment fiction, we hate it when that happens. If you created a squeaky clean good guy and a mustache twirling bad guy, we would hate it. And if Superman fell out of favor because, he was a representation of an ideal that we don't believe in. there's always a little bit of dark in the light and a little bit of light in the dark. And it's confusing, and the answers aren't straightforward. But I gotta tell you, Batman's infinitely more interesting to watch than Superman. So let's bring that back into our discourse. Let's not sit there and go, I am Superman, and everything outside of the scope of what Superman believes is just evil, right? And let's explore the idea of being Batman, where everyone out there essentially is good, but there's conflict because we have a variety of different competing ideas. Let's take cognitive dissonance and attack it, pull it apart, unpack it, right? I have never been afraid of being called a hypocrite. I don't consider it an insult per se. Well, it depends on the context, doesn't it? But I believe in the evolution of ideas and opinions. And, I have my bedrock of beliefs. That's unchanging. Well, I say that now, but I'll tell you, the one saying that I have ever since I was a kid is that the strongest beliefs that you have stand up to your own razor-sharp self-scrutiny. If you can really challenge your own beliefs and take that critical eye that you put on other people and put it on yourself, and some beliefs come out of the crucible pure, with all the impurities burned off of it, that's you. That's essentially you. That's who you are inside, right? But you got to constantly be questioning yourself. You got to be constantly challenging yourself. Otherwise, you stagnate mentally, right? Anyway, wow. I thought I was too tired to get into this. I don't know. I hope you guys enjoy my early morning rantings. And we'll leave it at that. I've only got one viewer. That's okay. These are being farmed out to my YouTube channel and to Twitch and stuff like that for posterity in a lot of ways. If the only audience I get are my sons when they grow up, well, this is a chat with you guys. This is what your dad used to do when you guys were away at school.